The goods movement industry in Southern California is the engine of prosperity for the entire region. With 14 million TEUs traveling through the system annually, the high volume of cargo has provided a steady flow of economic activity and a constant source of good-paying jobs. This commanding performance by the Twin Port Harbor Complex is even more impressive when considering it has occurred while adapting to a densely populated, high-traffic area with the most stringent air quality environmental standards in the nation. Now, however, competition from other ports, including those in Canada, and new possibilities through the Suez Canal and the expanded Panama Canal have made it imperative for the San Pedro Bay to re-emphasize speed and efficiency in all operations. For Southern California to remain dominant in the nation's goods movement industry, a sharp focus on maintaining rapid, cost-effective throughput is essential and must be continuous throughout the supply chain delivery system. This will become especially important when megaships routinely begin arriving with more than 12,000 TEUs, or 6,000 40-foot containers. Traditional thinking in goods movement circles claims that containerized cargo exists in two forms, local and discretionary. As of calendar year 2011 statistics, local cargo accounts for about 34% of the total imported containers. These containers are delivered to their final destinations via trucks within a 500-mile radius of the San Pedro Bay ports. The approximately 66% of container cargo considered discretionary includes those intermodal goods that ultimately travel by rail to destinations east of the Rocky Mountains. A breakdown of the 66% discretionary figure reveals that 26% moves directly to on-dock rail. Another 13% is taken by truck to off-dock rail. The remaining 27% is trucked to a transloading facility where the goods are mixed or combined with other goods in larger containers and then trucked to an off-dock rail facility for the long intermodal journey east. The transloaded cargo requires large warehousing, distribution, and transferring centers capable of managing complicated cargo sorting specifications. Transloading is projected to grow in the future. New thinking about cargo delivery patterns now suggests that discretionary and local items are not as distinct and separate as they were in the past. If the most elastic or flexible discretionary cargo, the direct intermodal containers, can be lured to another port complex, a significant portion of the local cargo originally destined for Southern California can also travel to the alternative port. After all, trains and trucks can travel both ways, east and west, or north and south. These potential threats of cargo lost are more than just theoretical. One well-known major discount retailer previously delivered 60% of all of its overseas imported goods to the LA Long Beach harbor. Today, that volume has been cut to only 10%. Another recognizable retailer has reduced all of its imported deliveries to LA Long Beach from 74% down to around 50%. By taking these actions, beneficial cargo owners have echoed all of the expressed concerns regarding efficiency and cost in the San Pedro Bay.
When we sit down and we look at efficiency and throughput, I would argue that it depends on which stakeholder you're talking to. They would put forward what the most important deficiency that we have, and in their perfect world, what the solution would be. The challenge is we need to find that common ground. We have lots of stakeholders in the supply chain, and on the one hand, when you think about it, I just want to pat us all on the back for saying, my goodness, how in the world have we managed to do this without a master plan, really? Clearly, individually, we all have master plans, but that's not a general plan, so to speak.
One of the loudest complaints heard in the harbor involves frustration over the waiting periods for trucks seeking to pick up containers. Long waiting periods can cause the so-called turn times to stretch from 30 minutes to occasionally more than 3 hours. Truckers heading to the Inland Empire will make fewer turns per shift because of the mileage involved. but will receive more compensation to cover the additional road time to either San Bernardino or Riverside County. In the final analysis, the overriding issue is that the vast majority of import containers arriving in the San Pedro Bay must leave the terminals on truck chassis. Approximately 74% of all imported containers travel by truck when heading out of the gates, whether to local destinations or to off-dock rail. Moving these millions of containers on trucks begets the logistical dilemmas concerning congestion, chassis, turn times, waiting periods, day shifts, night shifts, and the off-peak hours program known as Pier Pass.
It's a difficult situation to move cargo in LA Long Beach, the scale at which we have to move it and the amount of players that are involved with it. It's a fairly complex, it's not complicated, but it's a complex operation because you've got the ships working, you've got this gate activity, and you've got this on-dock rail activity. And we are interested in moving cargo as quick as we can. And I think sometimes people think we're here to delay cargo. We're not. We're here to move as quick as we can, get the cargo moving, but there is a lot of complexity to these operations that we have to manage through, and it's what we're paid to manage through. But there's good days and there's bad days, and we try to have more good days than bad days, but at the end of the day, we are interested in moving the cargo as quick as we can.
While it may be easy for individual stakeholders to comment on making operations more efficient, the reality is the intricate relationships between separate entities in the local goods movement process are actually quite complex. Each strategy to improve efficiency has a ripple effect or a domino effect on other industry segments. When considering this interconnected complexity, it is important to recognize that the various major stakeholders follow separate business models and have differing objectives, which are not always parallel. The equally important participants with the most at stake in this example are the following. First, beneficial cargo owners or shippers, which are mostly discount retailers, big box stores, electronics merchants, auto parts businesses, and clothing stores. Often the beneficial cargo owners, or BCOs, are represented by logistics providers such as freight forwarders and customs brokers who are contracted to arrange the most efficient container delivery strategies. Second, ocean carrier steamship lines, which deliver the important products port to port from the Far East. Third, marine terminal operators, which may or may not be owned or controlled by the ocean carrier lines. Fourth, the trucking industry, which includes dispatching and the driver-owner-operators. Fifth, longshore workers and the ILWU. Another affected stakeholder group without a direct business interest is the local population living near or next door to harbor operations.
Well, there's a lot of fear, first off, in the community. Number one, of the anticipated growth coming forward. Currently there are 5 projects that are impacted in the community, and most immediately the West Long Beach community. Those projects being the Middle Port expansion, the Desmond Bridge, the PRS, the SCIG project, and in addition the expansion of the 710 freeway.
Beneficial cargo owners have various business objectives. High-value products like jewelry, designer clothing, and expensive electronics items may need to get to the marketplace quickly. Accordingly, containers carrying those goods will get priority shipping service. Volume-based discount retailers, on the other hand, may not demand as much urgency for containers loaded with inexpensive household items and everyday goods. Yet, with thousands of containers arriving on the same ship, the high-value container can end up on the bottom of the stack in the marine terminal. When the truck comes to pick up the high-value container, it forces the movement of lesser-value containers which reside above it in the stack. The containers that get moved around to provide access to the higher-value container will inevitably be shifted back into another stack. When multiplying this process by thousands of containers and the random sorting that has to occur repeatedly, the magnitude of the problem becomes apparent. Ocean carrier lines concentrate on shipping high volumes of containers from the manufacturing hubs of East Asia to North America. The carrier lines are always seeking a competitive edge when providing pricing to beneficial cargo owners. A competitive edge can be the ownership of or a controlling interest in a marine terminal facility. At every step, the carrier line seeks to operate with the least amount of cost in order to lure customers. Contracts between ocean carriers and BCOs are short-term and are reviewed every year to address costs, placing enormous pressure on the steamship lines to focus only on expenses. Cutting costs potentially adds time to the final delivery of containers. A ripple effect can be the on-duty labor staffing at the marine terminal becoming overwhelmed during night hours as trucks arrive in large numbers to avoid daytime traffic mitigation fees. Marine terminal operators follow a business model that must take into account projections of container volume and the subsequent cost of moving that cargo all the way from the ship to the trucks that deliver it outside the gate. This business model has to include an attainable profit margin in order to stay in operation. Contracts with shipping lines for stevedoring service and final delivery are negotiated in long-term deals, often extending as long as 10 years, although the deals can be terminated with short notice. The contracts in the past have assumed that cargo would move in the daytime hours between 8 to 5 in order to keep labor costs as low as possible. Changes to operations, such as Pier Pass traffic mitigation fees, driven by community pressure and elected representatives, have pushed more than half of container pickups to night hours and Saturdays, when labor costs are higher. On-dock intermodal cargo is exempt from Pier Pass and can travel anytime without the fee assessment. Pier Pass was not on the horizon when contracts with shipping lines were negotiated 10 years ago. According to Pier Pass officials, traffic mitigation fees currently only cover about 2/3 of the cost of nighttime operations. Terminals also must shut down large portions of the docks to civilian traffic for safety reasons when active stevedoring operations are underway. Compared to other ports in other regions, real estate is at a premium in the LA Long Beach harbor. Terminals must pay more per square footage on their leases in Southern California than they would elsewhere in the United States. All costs have to fit into the profitability model.
I think the supply chain in general here is strong, but there's always some caution about whether we're doing enough to stay competitive, right? If you look at figures from recent years in percentage of goods of all West Coast traffic that's moved through here, we've lost a little bit, and ports both in Canada and Mexico have gained at our expense. There's a lot of factors that go into that. Some of it's the economy in general, but there's always an alternative. There is always an alternative.
The trucking industry involves mostly local owner-operators who invest in their own trucks and must rely on steady work and multiple daily turns in the harbor to make ends meet. Truckers face delays when chassis are not readily available or must be retrieved at a different terminal or yard from the location of the container. The cost of maintenance, coupled with the inconsistent availability of chassis, has become an issue in the harbor. A heavy imbalance between imports and exports often means that empty outbound containers and related equipment must be repositioned or transported around the terminals without any revenue-generating cargo being involved. Also, because of increased nighttime container movement related to Pier Pass, many truckers have opted to wait outside terminals as long as 2 or 3 hours before night gates open. They do this with the hope of being first in line when the night shift begins. Some truckers have decided to split shifts from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m., hoping to catch several hours of afternoon cargo delivery before entering the more congested evening hours when turn times tend to slow down. The result is a situation whereby Monday through Friday daytime mornings are not congested. However, beneficial cargo owners who desire to avoid daytime traffic mitigation fees lack the incentive to dispatch trucks for pickups during those uncongested morning hours.
We've got a lot of competing pressures. You've got the terminal operators that are constrained in terms of the amount of money that they can spend on labor in any one shift. You also see the Pier Pass fee play an impact on that. So at 5 or 6 o'clock at night, you go down to any of the terminals and you'll see a tremendous line of trucks waiting to get in. So I think you see a compound of a number of different issues. The labor issue, obviously terminal operators constrained in what they can pay and how much staff they can put at the gates at that shift. And then you see the pier pass fee, click off at 6 o'clock. And so I think you combine all those things and you see just a tremendous wait at the gates to get in at 6, 7 o'clock.
Longshore labor and the ILWU constitute the important ground force empowered with making sure that goods move on and off the docks as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Longshore workers are arranged and hired by management and assigned shifts based on the needs of the specific marine terminals. There are 3 possible shifts designated by the standard contract: daytime from 8 to 5, evening from 6 p.m. to 3 a.m., and the so-called hoot owl shift from 3 to 8 a.m. Pay is increased for the night shift and the hoot owl shift. Marine terminal operators prefer the day shift labor rate, but are increasingly forced to provide more staffing for the night shift because of the pier pass related movement of nearly 55% of containers during the night hours. Independent truckers working in a split shift between noon and 10 p.m. are effectively straddling the day and night shifts of the ILWU. This split shift strategy includes a break between 5 and 6 p.m. when no containers are moving. Suggestions have been made to the marine terminals to offer more flex time, as was done in the past. This flex time proposal would bridge the lunch hours and the evening breaks in order to facilitate operations non-stop from 8 a.m. to 3 a.m. The ripple effect in this case would be additional labor costs for the marine terminals. However, ILWU leaders insist that the gains in overall efficiency would more than offset any additional expenses.
So everybody's looking at what can I do to save the bottom line. So if I can drive at night, it's cheaper for me to do it, I do it. So people are doing that, which means you start picking up increase in night work. But the problem is the manning doesn't increase with the night work either. They keep the same amount of manning. They don't increase it to offset the increase in truckers moving to nights. So you still have wait times. You still have the same inefficiencies you have on the day side. There's a lot less personnel working on the terminals themselves, so you always have a lot more inefficiency with worker personnel. So you have those 2 problems. You also have the instance with making it feasible here. The pier pass comes with a big price tag.
Residents who live in the neighborhoods near the big cranes and the trucking lanes and freeways have expressed their concerns about goods movement and truck congestion issues. These complaints have been heard by state legislators, community leaders, and environmental attorneys. Through legal mitigation, legislation, and proactive industry-generated solutions such as Pier Pass and the Clean Trucks program, major objectives have been accomplished in reducing congestion on freeways and local streets and in reducing harmful emissions. Efficiency improvements have included the harbor's efforts to become not only a good neighbor, but also a very committed green neighbor.
And I think we've done a good job. We move a lot of cargo. We do it safely. We've secured our terminals over the years. A lot of this is from legislation requirements. We've also, our biggest accomplishment, I think, that's what our community is going to say, is we're going green. Going green is paramount these days. Your operation has to stay efficient, but you also have to go green. And we're doing that.
If the twin ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach are to remain preeminent marketplace leaders in goods movement, the future will mean coming to terms with a variety of issues that will affect the way business is done. With more options for shippers becoming available in the next few years, the stakeholders in the San Pedro Bay will have to review every aspect of current operations. This review process is vital in securing the jobs and cargo that have the ability to move to wherever the lowest cost, most efficient throughput can be found. Clearly, to beat the competition in the years ahead, the local industry will have to be centered on reliability, speed, and efficiency.